progress. Let me go back 12 months, and I think I can highlight several events which demonstrate that there is an awakening underway. Some of these involve events, some of these involve initiatives. If we go back to April of 2007, we had the denial of service attacks taking place in Estonia, which what I would largely call a digital student uprising that happened to involve state-owned computers in Estonia and, of course, in Russia, which raised a lot of eyebrows. But nonetheless, it proved that a near-spontaneous demonstration can significantly disrupt information networks. That led to, I guess, the second thing that I would point to, statements out of NATO's commander that, in fact, NATO really didn't have a cybersecurity strategy. And if I just can update it to a statement made just 2 days ago, the individual in charge of cybersecurity for NATO said that now cybersecurity is seen as great of risk as a missile attack, which I thought was interesting. I hadn't seen that kind of statement before. I just ran across it this morning, in fact. If we fast forward into August of last year, we have Germany's Chancellor Merkel talking about cyber attacks, talking about cyber espionage, that countries like China and Russia are engaging in cyber espionage. It's really the first time we had, I believe, a head of state really talking about these issues. If we roll forward a couple of more months into November and December of 2007, we have a letter from the UK's MI5 to the top 300 companies in the UK underscoring the concerns of cyber risk, if you will, espionage underway, naming names, naming China in the process as being behind some of the attacks that are underway. And then if we come into 2008, we have on January 8, President Bush signed a National Security Presidential Directive number 54 that establishes several programs to address cybersecurity. So for the first time, I can say in a long time, there is an awakening underway. And I think that is a very positive development. But we also know, at least here in the United States, we're facing a transition. So whatever steps are started now, will there be momentum? Can we keep it up? Can the government keep it going? Can the private sector keep it going? And so there's some question mark as to our ultimate success. As many predicted, though, we are learning the hard way with regard to cyber attacks. Government was not really willing to be proactive on this. They were willing to let it slide. They were willing to give it to the U.S. government, willing to give it to the Department of Homeland Security. The Department of Homeland Security had multiple problems on its hands, and frankly, it was lost in the shuffle. And I think only recently has the department started to take it more seriously, but really only that has happened at the behest of the Director of National Intelligence. McConnell, who's the head of Director of National Intelligence, really deserves, I think, in large part, the credit for really putting this issue on the President's agenda and making the government focus more squarely on the issue of cybersecurity. Now we have significant money that is supposedly going to be spent by the federal government. You guys have seen the press reports just as much as I have, ranging from $16 billion to $30 billion over the next several years. Very, very important that we're spending money. Of course, we have to do that wisely, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So what you might ask, okay, whoa, what's precipitating all this activity? Well, one, you have the Estonian attacks. But, candidly, what's happening inside the U.S. government systems is, if you will, there's a methodology underway of vacuuming information out of U.S. government systems. And this is really not the first time we've seen it. We can go back to Moonlight Maze in the late 90s, Titan Rain, in early 2001, 2002, 2003. I may be off on my time frame a little bit. And now we're into something else going on. The Wall Street Journal pointed to something called Byzantine Hades, which may be a cover name for what is a continuation of what happened under Moonlight Maze. Who knows? But the bottom line is we have significant information being vacuumed from systems. And so how does that methodology work? Well, you have a lot of our information is in databases that candidly are not well protected. In other words, it's unclassified information. That information is vacuumed, and the attacker culls through that information using very sophisticated data mining that, by the way, is open to everybody out there via Google or whatever, to try to refine who's important, what projects are important, and then they use that information to develop more targeted attacks. For example, like spear phishing attacks, where you attack or send an email with an attachment to a specific individual within the government. There's malware within that attachment that enables greater access, and the cycle continues. That's just one form of attack that is out there today. This is not all about if we handle spear phishing, we're good to go. No, no, no. There are many more problems underway today. So as we look at this problem, and as we move forward and potentially spend billions of dollars here in the United States, I think what I would like to do today is underscore 10 steps to success. Number one, government needs to get its act together first. I think the NSPD that was signed by the president is a recognition of that. The private sector, if you will, has to be patient with the government in getting its act together first, but I would caveat that to say that government, as rapidly as possible, needs to disclose to the private sector the types of attacks it is seeing in a way that allows the private sector to protect itself. You know, vast amounts of information, national security related, economic security related, intellectual property are being taken for assistance. It's not just happening in the federal government. It's not just happening in the contracting community. It's much broader. And unless you know what you're looking for, you may not, in fact, see it. So I would encourage the government to disclose sooner rather than later the types of attacks they're seeing so the private sector can appropriately protect itself. Number two, the private sector needs to keep working on this problem on its own as the government tries to get its hands around the problem. And here in this space, the private sector needs to take steps, if you will, as firms individually and collectively. In this space, I would highlight the initiative SafeCode. I happen to be the executive director of SafeCode. SafeCode is the software assurance forum for excellence in code. It's quite a mouthful. They're focused on bringing together best practices and standards in software assurance. What is unique about this organization, I argue, is that they have come together to share best practices and talk about problems that they have in trying to secure code. And fundamentally, if we can't secure the code, we're going to be open to lots of problems. SafeCode just released its first white paper a couple of weeks ago. It's available on the website, www.safecode.org. It walks through the 5 members have put on paper for everybody to see their general best practices in software assurance. Someone, if you can find out any other place in the world that has several firms putting down their individual assurance practices on the same page, let me know. That's a step forward. The second thing that they've done is at the end of the document, they've listed the 10 steps or 10 questions, if you will, that companies that are purchasing software should ask of vendors. Modest steps in the right direction. The third thing I would underscore as far as steps for success is understand that closing our borders in cyberspace is neither possible nor desirable. I think many now who are coming in tune with this problem say, oh, okay, well, we'll just kind of cut ourselves off, or all software must be made in the United States, or you can't have foreign hands touch software. I really don't think that's practical. There was a Department of Defense put out I think a fairly well thought out guide in September, which was, the Defense Science Board put out a study back in September which highlighted some of the issues. But then more recently there was a systems assurance guide, draft guide, that was released by the Department of Defense, and they've invited public comment on this. It talks about asking vendors potentially what percentage of the code or the product is made overseas or touched by foreign hands. Is that really practical? Is that really possible in this day and age? This is about risk management. We need to be far more practical as to how we handle these issues in the IT age and think differently.